What if I told you that right now, in this exact moment, no matter how hard you think you are working or how utterly exhausted you feel at the end of a long week, you are only tapping into about 40% of your true potential? I want you to really just sit with that for a second. What if the burnout, the fear, the feeling of hitting a wall, and all those hard limitations you feel,
Mm-hmm.
what if they're not actually physical limits?
Right.
What if they're just a mental governor, a piece of software in your brain designed to keep you comfortable, but not necessarily safe or successful?
It's a staggering thought, isn't it? Because we feel that fatigue so viscerally. We feel like we're giving 100%.
Of course.
But the premise we're looking at today suggests that the vast majority of our capability, the other 60%, is just sitting there, dormant, locked away behind a wall of our own making.
Exactly. And that is the central, terrifying, and maybe liberating premise we are exploring today. We are going to find out exactly how to shatter those limits and master the mind. Today, we are doing a deep dive into the phenomenon that is "can't hurt me." Master Your Mind and Defy the Odds, written by the man who is arguably the hardest man alive, David Goggins.
And when you look at his resume, that title, Hardest Man Alive, is actually hard to dispute. It's not hyperbole.
No, it really isn't.
We're talking about the only member of the U.S. Armed Forces to complete Navy SEAL training. That's BUSUS Army Ranger School and Air Force Tactical Air Controller training.
The trifecta. The absolute triple crown of suffering.
That is the trifecta of special operations suffering, yes.
Well, and that's just the military side.
Right. That's just one part of his life. He is also a former world record holder for pull-ups, completing over 4,000 in 17 hours.
Which is just, my arms hurt thinking about that.
He is an ultra-endurance athlete who runs hundreds of miles at a time through places like Death Valley. And the crazy thing is, he did all of this despite growing up in abject poverty, facing severe physical abuse, and battling learning disabilities that left him functionally illiterate in high school.
It is an absolutely bonkers resume. It really does read like fiction. But before we get into the blood, sweat, and tears, and believe me, there is plenty of all three in this story, I want to extend a quick invitation to you. If you love getting these captivating summaries of the world's best books and want to ensure you don't miss out on future deep dives into the minds of the world's most interesting people, please just take a second to subscribe to the channel Audiobook. We are here to help you learn faster, deeper, and more efficiently.
Absolutely. In a world of noise, curating your inputs is maybe the most important discipline you can have.
Well said. So let's unpack this. Because when you see David Goggins now, if you follow him on Instagram or you see him in interviews, you see this chiseled, intense Navy SEAL.
He looks like he was carved out of granite.
Exactly. You think he was built in a lab to endure pain. But the origin story here is not a superhero story. It's a horror story. It starts in Williamsville, New York, in what looked like the American dream.
That contrast is so crucial for understanding his psychology. If you drove past the Goggins house on Paradise Road in the early 80s, you'd see a pristine, white wooden home. You'd see a perfectly manicured lawn.
The whole 9 yards.
There was a Rolls Royce in the garage. His father, David Goggins, was a successful businessman who owned a roller disco called Skateland. To the neighbors, they were the model of success.
But that was the facade. Inside the house, it was quite literally hell.
It was a house of terror. David Goggins wasn't just a strict father, he was a tyrant. And he wasn't just running a disco, he was running a prostitution ring, he was gambling, and he was controlling his family with a level of violence that is, it's hard to even describe.
And we need to talk about the labor, too. Because David wasn't just living in a violent home, he was a child laborer.
Yeah.
At 6 years old, when most kids are, learning to ride bikes or playing with action figures, David was working the night shift.
Imagine the developmental impact of this. Every single night, David would drag his family to Skateland. While the disco music was blaring and people were skating, 6-year-old David was put to work.
What was he doing?
He was responsible for organizing the rental skates, hundreds of pairs of smelly, sweaty skates. He was scrubbing toilets filled with filth, and when he was finally allowed to sleep, it wasn't in a bed.
Amazing.
It was on a couch in the office with the bass of the disco music just shaking the walls until the early hours of the morning.
So he's sleep-deprived, he's exhausted, and he's terrified. The abuse detailed in the book it's graphic. It wasn't just a spanking. It was beatings with belts with fists.
There is one specific anecdote that really illustrates the level of cruelty we are talking about here. David had developed a severe ear infection.
Ugh, those are the worst.
Anyone who has had one knows that pain. It's excruciating. So his mother, Jackie, sees her son suffering and decides to take him to the hospital.
Which is what a parent is supposed to do. A normal parent.
Right. But Trinus didn't see it that way. He hated spending money on anything that didn't benefit him or his image. When they returned from the hospital, Trinus went into a rage.
Oh, no.
He didn't just yell, he attacked Jackie. He was beating her senseless in front of David.
And this is a pivotal moment for Goggins, right?
Yeah.
He's this little boy, terrified, but he makes a choice.
He jumps on his father's back. Imagine the courage that takes. A 6-year-old boy trying to fight a grown man who is in a violent rage. He was trying to protect his mother.
Wow.
This is where he first articulated that feeling of hate over fear. He hated his father more than he feared what his father would do to him.
But real life isn't a movie. The kid doesn't knock out the villain.
No, not at all. Trinus threw him off like a rag doll, and then he beat David mercilessly. But that moment planted a seed. It was the first time David acted out of something other than pure submission. Eventually, though, the situation became untenable. His mother orchestrated an escape.
They fled to Brazil, Indiana. And this sounds like the happy ending to the first act, right? They got away.
You'd think so.
But they traded physical danger for crushing abject poverty.
It was a massive culture shock and a socioeconomic crash. In New York, they had the Rolls-Royce and the big house. In Indiana, they were living in public housing that cost $7 a month.
$7 a month.
They were surviving on welfare. There is a scene Goggins describes where they are scrounging for loose change in the couch cushions just to buy food or keep the lights on.
And even though the physical beatings from his father had stopped, the trauma didn't just vanish. I mean, you can't just move states and leave your nervous system behind.
That is the insidious nature of trauma. We really need to talk about toxic stress. This isn't just being stressed out about a test. When a developing brain is exposed to constant high-stakes, threat-like living with Trinus, the brain literally wires itself differently.
It gets stuck in fight or flight. Is that the idea?
Exactly. The body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline constantly. It puts the brain in survival mode. The problem is, when you are in survival mode, the parts of the brain responsible for complex learning, memory, emotional regulation, specifically the prefrontal cortex, they get suppressed.
No.
You cannot learn algebra when your brain thinks a tiger, or in this case, your father is about to attack you.
So David is sitting in class in Indiana, safe physically, but his brain is still at Skateland.
Precisely. He developed a severe stutter. His hair started falling out in clumps due to the stress, and academically, he was drowning. By the time he was in high school, he was reading at a 3rd grade level.
The 3rd grade level. In high school.
He literally could not process the information.
And this leads to the shame spiral. He knows he's the dumb kid. He knows he's different, so he starts cheating.
It was a survival mechanism. He didn't cheat because he was lazy. He cheated because he was terrified of being exposed. He would copy homework, look at neighbors' tests, do whatever he had to do to just pass. He built this whole facade of adequacy, but deep down, he knew he was hollow.
He was building a house of cards.
Yeah.
And eventually the wind blows. He gets a letter from the school basically saying, you are failing. You are not going to graduate.
And this hit him hard because he did have a dream. He wanted to join the Air Force. He had seen a documentary about pararescue jumpers, PJs, and he thought, that's honor, that's courage, I want that.
Okay.
But when reality hit him, that he couldn't read well enough to pass the ASVAB exam, the house of cards just collapsed.
This brings us to one of the most iconic scenes in the book. It's not on a battlefield. It's not in a race. It's in a bathroom.
The accountability mirror.
I want to really dig into this because in today's world, we hear a lot about self-care and being gentle with yourself. Goggins goes a completely opposite direction.
180 degrees opposite.
He goes into the bathroom, shaves his face, shaves his head, and just stares at himself.
It's a moment of reckoning. He looked at his reflection, and he didn't see a victim. He saw a failure. And he decided to verbalize it. He looked himself in the eye and said, you are dumb. You read like a 3rd grader. You are a clown. You are embarrassing.
Okay, hold on. To a lot of listeners, that sounds incredibly damaging. Isn't that just negative self-talk? Isn't that just reinforcing the trauma? Why does he insist on being so brutal?
That is a valid question, and it really goes against modern psychological orthodoxy. But Goggins' argument is that self-love often becomes an excuse for mediocrity. He believes that you cannot fix a problem if you cloak it in euphemisms. If you are overweight and you tell yourself, I'm just big boned, you won't do the work to get healthy. If you are uneducated and you tell yourself, I'm just not a school person, you won't study.
So it's about raw, objective truth.
Yes. The mirror reflects reality. It doesn't care about your feelings. He wasn't saying, I am a worthless human being. He was saying, my current state is unacceptable. There is a critical difference.
So how did he turn that self-flagellation into action? He didn't just stand there and insult himself all day.
No, he weaponized the truth. He covered that mirror in Post-it notes, but these weren't affirmations like, you are beautiful or you are strong. They were tactical orders.
Like what?
Clean your room, make your bed, run 2 miles, study for 2 hours without cheating.
He started parenting himself.
Exactly. He realized nobody was coming to save him. He had to build a new character from scratch, one Post-it note at a time. Every night, he had to stand in front of that mirror. If he had cheated or skipped a workout, he couldn't hide from his reflection. The accountability mirror forced him to align his actions with his goals.
And it worked. He taught himself to read. He stopped cheating. He got into the Air Force. He became a TACP, a tactical air control party. But the story doesn't just go up and to the right from there. It's not that simple.
No, and this is why his story resonates so much. Progress isn't linear. After a few years in the Air Force, he left. He had some health issues, but mostly he just lost the drive. He fell back into comfort.
And comfort, for him, looked like a lot of food.
A staggering amount of food. He gained over 100 pounds. He was working as an Ecolab exterminator, spraying for cockroaches in restaurants overnight.
Wow.
He was driving around with a giant canister of poison, stopping at 7-Eleven to buy boxes of donuts and chocolate milkshakes. He ballooned up to nearly 300 pounds.
From Air Force Special Ops hopeful to a 300-pound exterminator. That is a heavy fall.
He was medically obese. He was depressed. He had let the accountability mirror gather dust. But then he has another one of these moments. He's at home watching the Discovery Channel, and he sees a show on Navy SEAL training, specifically Class 224 during Hell Week.
He feels that spark again, that old feeling.
He felt the shame of what he had become compared to what he could be, so he decides right then and there, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL.
Which is ludicrous. He's 297 pounds. He calls recruiters, and they literally laugh at him.
I hang up on him.
Yeah, they tell him he's too old, too heavy. It's impossible.
Until one recruiter finally took him seriously, but gave him an impossible ultimatum. To make the cutoff for the next BUDS class, Goggins had to lose 106 pounds in less than 3 months.
106 pounds in less than 90 days. That sounds physically impossible and, frankly, really dangerous.
It is incredibly dangerous. But Goggins didn't care about safety. He cared about redemption. This is where the concept of callousing the mind begins to take physical form. His routine was, it was medieval.
Walk us through a day in the life of Goggins during this weight loss period.
Okay, so he would wake up at 4:30 a.m. He would get on an exercise bike and ride for 2 solid hours. Then he would go to the pool and swim for 2 hours. Now, you have to keep in mind, he was terrified of water.
Right, you talked about that a lot.
He was negatively buoyant, meaning he had dense muscle and bone, so he sank like a stone. He wasn't swimming laps gracefully. He was literally fighting for his life in the water every day.
And then working out more after that.
Oh, yeah. Circuit training, running, and his diet. It was barely existent. He was running a massive caloric deficit. He was hungry, tired, and in pain every single second of every single day. But he kept going back to that mindset. I have to do this to become who I want to be.
And he made it. He lost the weight. He got into BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. It is widely considered the hardest military training in the world. And this is where we get to the concept of taking souls. This is one of the most fascinating psychological tactics in the book.
It is. And to understand it, we have to look at the power dynamic of BUDS. The instructors have all the power. Their job is to find your breaking point and absolutely crush you. They want you to ring that bell and quit.
So set the scene for us. It's Hell Week.
Hell Week is the defining event of SEAL training. 5.5 days of continuous training with a total of about 4 hours of sleep for the entire week. You are wet, you are cold, you are covered in sand, which chafes your skin until it bleeds. Goggins is in Boat Crew 2.
And Boat Crew 2 was the reject crew, right? They were the underdogs.
They were the small guys, the misfits. The instructors, especially one they called Psycho Pete, targeted them relentlessly. They wanted Boat Crew 2 to fail. They were hammering them with extra punishment, extra push-ups, extra runs with the boat.
So the crew is broken. They're dragging. And Goggins realizes something about the instructors.
He realizes that the instructors are human beings. They are projecting strength, but they get tired too. They get cold too. And more importantly, he realizes they feed off the suffering of the trainees. When a trainee looks miserable, the instructor feels powerful.
It's an energy exchange.
Exactly. So Goggins decides to reverse the flow of energy. He tells his boat crew, we are going to beat them. Not physically, you can't fight the instructors, but psychologically.
So what did he do?
He rallies the team. He gets them to lift this heavy rubber boat, which weighs hundreds of pounds when it's wet and sandy high over their heads.
And he started shouting.
He starts screaming, who's going to carry the boats? Who's going to carry the logs? He is projecting pure, unadulterated aggression and energy when they're supposed to be at their absolute weakest.
How did the instructors react? I imagine they did not like that.
They were confused. They were standing there drinking their hot coffee, wrapped in their warm jackets, just waiting for these men to collapse. Instead, they see boat crew, two standing tall, screaming, acting invincible. Goggins saw the instructor's body language change. They stopped joking. They looked uncomfortable.
He took their souls.
That's the definition. Taking a soul is when you use your opponent's expectations against them. They expect you to break. When you don't, when you actually seem to enjoy the pain, you destroy their confidence. You take the energy they're using to oppress you and you claim it for yourself. It's about gaining a tactical advantage by dominating the emotional landscape.
It's brilliant because it turns the victim into the predator, psychologically speaking. Even when you're physically helpless, you can still control your reaction, and that connects directly to his idea of the calloused mind.
Yes, he uses the analogy of working with your hands. If you shovel coal or lift weights without gloves, your hands are going to blister. It hurts. But if you keep doing it, the skin heals thicker. It becomes hard. It becomes a callus. Eventually, you can handle the shovel without pain.
And he applies this to the brain, to your mentality.
He believes you must do the same with your mind. Modern life is soft. We have air conditioning, Uber Eats, soft beds. Our minds are soft like baby skin. When we hit a little bit of adversity, a rude bell, a traffic jam, a cold day, we tend to crumble.
So how do you callous your mind? You can't just lift weights with it.
You have to expose yourself to suffering intentionally. You have to engage the sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight response on purpose repeatedly in controlled ways.
Can you give us an example from his training where he does this?
The knot drill is the perfect example. In SEAL training, they have a test where you have to dive into a pool, swim to the bottom, and tie a series of 5 different knots on an underwater rig.
Sounds hard, but doable on its own.
It's hard because the instructors are in the water with you, ripping your mask off, tying your air hoses in knots, spinning you around to disorient you. They are simulating combat droning.
My God.
And Goggins was failing this test. He was panicking. His soft mind was screaming, I'm going to die, get to the surface.
So how did he fix it? How did he pass?
He went back to the barracks and he visualized the fear. He realized that his panic was the enemy, not the water. He decided to stay underwater. During the next drill, when they attacked him, instead of fighting, he went limp. He calmed his heart rate. He stopped fighting the water and started fighting his reaction.
He calloused his mind against the panic.
Exactly. He stayed calm, tied the knots, and passed.
It's the ability to function when every instinct in your body is telling you to run. Now, getting through SEAL training is an incredible feat, but Goggins didn't stop there. He went on to become an ultra-endurance athlete, and this leads us to the 40% rule. This might be the most famous takeaway from his life, but I think people often misunderstand it.
They do. They think it's just a slogan. But it originates from a very specific, very gruesome event, the San Diego One Day.
This is a 24-hour ultramarathon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Goggins wanted to raise money for the families of fallen soldiers, specifically the guys killed in Operation Red Wings, the lone survivor mission. So he Googled toughest foot races and found the Badwater 135. But to qualify, he had to run 100 miles in 24 hours.
And had he been training for running at this point?
No, not at all.
Right.
He was a power lifter at the time. He was big. He hadn't run more than maybe 20 miles in a year. He literally decided on a Tuesday to run 100 miles that weekend.
That's a recipe for disaster.
It was a physiological catastrophe. He starts running around this 1 mile track. Around mile 70, his body completely shuts down. And we aren't talking about hitting the wall like in a marathon. We're talking about major organ failure.
Be specific. What was happening to him?
He was peeing dark brown, blood Coca-Cola colored. This is rhabdomyolysis. His muscles were breaking down so fast that the proteins were clogging his kidneys. They were failing. He had broken the metatarsal bones in his feet from the constant impact. He had stress fractures in his shins. He physically collapsed into a folding chair at mile 70.
So he is sitting there, 30 miles to go, literally dying. Any rational person, any doctor would say, call an ambulance, you're done.
And that is where he discovered the governor.
Explain this concept. What is the governor?
Think of a high-performance car. The engine might be capable of going 200 miles per hour, but the manufacturer installs an electronic governor that cuts the fuel at 155 miles per hour. Why? To keep the engine safe, to prevent it from blowing up. The human brain does the exact same thing.
It limits us to keep us safe.
Exactly. When you're exercising and you feel that burning in your lungs, that heaviness in your legs, and your brain starts screaming, "Stop pee, I'm done, I can't go another step," Goggins argues that you are not done. You are not at 100%. You are only at 40% of your body's actual physiological capacity.
So that pain isn't a signal that the tank is empty. It's a warning light that you are leaving the comfort zone.
It's a negotiation. The governor is trying to protect your reserves for a true emergency. But you can choose to override it.
So how did he override it in that chair? He's broken, he's bleeding internally.
He realized that looking at the 30 miles left was impossible. His mind couldn't handle that data, so he chunked it. He stood up, which took supreme effort. And he said to himself, I'm just going to run to that light pole over there.
He shrunk the world.
He shrunk the task. Once he got to the light pole, he said, okay, I'm not dead. I'll run to the turn. He tricked the governor. He fed his brain these tiny little victories. He ran the final 30 miles on broken feet with failing kidneys by sheer force of will. He proved that the mind gives up long, long before the body actually breaks.
That is terrifying and inspiring. But I have to play devil's advocate here. Goggins ran on broken bone. He urinated blood. Is this advice we should actually be following? It sounds like a great way to end up in the ER.
That's the nuance, and it's a great question. Goggins isn't telling you to go run until your kidneys fail. He is using his extreme example to illustrate a point about our daily lives. Most of us aren't running 100 miles. We are sitting in an office.
All right.
The 40% rule applies when you are writing a report and you feel fried. You think, I can't write another word. That is your governor. You aren't actually fried. You are just bored and uncomfortable. Or when you are in a difficult conversation with your spouse and you want to walk away because it's emotional, that's the governor.
Oh, okay.
If you push past that feeling, you find a second wind. You find a depth of focus or patience you didn't know you had.
So the 40% rule is about recognizing that the feeling of I'm tired is usually a lie, or at least a gross exaggeration from your brain.
It's a prescriptive mechanism, and once you know it's there, you can choose to ignore it. You can push back.
Okay, but you can't just run on pure hate and adrenaline forever.
Right.
Eventually, you need something to sustain you when the suffering is really deep.
Mm-hmm.
Goggins talks about another tool for when you're in the pain cave, the cookie jar.
This is a great counterbalance to taking souls. Taking souls is external. It's about the enemy. The cookie jar is totally internal. It's about you.
I love the name. It sounds so domestic. The cookie jar? Like something at your grandma's house?
It's disarming. But the cookies aren't chocolate chip. They are made of grit. The concept is this. In your daily life, you gather memories of victories. Times you overcame something hard, times you didn't quit when you wanted to.
So you are stocking the jar as you go through life.
Yes. For Goggins, his cookies were things like overcoming his stutter, losing that 100 pounds, graduating BUDS, learning to read, even small things like finishing a workout when he was tired. Each one is a cookie.
And how do you use it? When do you open the jar?
When you are in the pain cave, that moment in a marathon or a huge project where everything is going wrong and your brain is spiraling, you mentally reach into the cookie jar. You pull out a memory. You remind yourself, wait a minute, I am the guy who lost 100 pounds in 3 months. I am the guy who survived Toughness Goggins.
It's an evidence locker.
That's a perfect description. It's not positive affirmation. It's not looking in the mirror and saying, I am a tiger. It's looking at the evidence of your own life. It counters the negative thought loop with hard data. I have handled worse than this, therefore I can handle this.
And he emphasizes that we need to catalog even the small victories. You don't need to be a Navy SEAL to have cookies.
No, a cookie can be, I handled that screaming toddler without losing my temper, or I finished that degree while working 2 jobs, or I got through that brutal presentation. It's about reminding yourself of your own resilience. It shifts your focus from the suffering of the moment to the strength of your character.
I want to shift gears to failure. Because if you just look at the highlight reel, Goggins looks like a machine who never fails. But the book is full of faceplants. He fails a lot.
He fails spectacularly. And he is incredibly open about it, which I respect. He talks about being uncommon amongst uncommon, but the path to that is absolutely paved with failure.
The pull-up record is the perfect example of this.
It is. He wanted to break the world record for pull-ups in 24 hours to raise money. The number to beat was 4,020.
And he attempts this on live television, right? The Today Show.
Yes. The spotlight is on, millions of people watching, and he fails. The bar they set up was loose and wobbly, so he was wasting all this energy just stabilizing himself. He did over 2,000 pull-ups, but his body gave out. He had to stop. It was a public failure on a national stage.
So he licks his wounds. And he tries again.
He tries again in a gym a few months later, and this time he underestimated the friction. He didn't have the right hand protection.
I remember reading this part. It was visceral.
His hands were shredded, major blisters. The skin was literally peeling off his palms. He was in agony. He failed again.
Most people would stop there. I tried twice. I humiliated myself. My hands are destroyed. Maybe I'm not meant to do this. It's just not for me.
But Goggins uses what he calls the after-action report. This is a military term. After a mission, whether it was a success or a failure, you sit down and you analyze exactly what happened. You don't wallow in emotion. You don't say, I'm a loser. You look at the data.
So he divorced his ego from the failure.
Exactly. He looked at the failure as information. Why did I fail? Grip strength, the type of bar. The foam padding was wrong. My nutrition was off. He treated it like a science experiment. He fixed the variables.
And on the third attempt,
he did it. He completed 4,030 pull-ups.
The empowerment of failure. That's a powerful reframing.
It is. He believes that if you aren't failing, you aren't aiming high enough. And if you let failure stop you, you missed the lesson. Failure is just a stepping stone. It's the tuition you pay for success.
This brings us to his time in Ranger School. He was already a SEAL. He had a trident. He could have coasted. He was at the top of the food chain in the special ops world. But he went to Army Ranger School. Why?
Because he wanted to be uncommon amongst uncommon. He realized that even in the SEAL teams, there were guys who coasted. He didn't want to be the big fish in a small pond. He wanted to be the wolf among wolves. He sought out the hardest environments to test himself.
And he talks about the zero mentality.
This is critical. Goggins says that no matter what you did yesterday, whether you ran 100 miles, broke a record, or closed a $1 million deal today, you are at zero.
The slate is wiped clean.
Every single morning. You haven't done anything today. The refrigerator is never full. You have to hunt every single day. You can't rest on your laurels or live in the past. It's an exhausting way to live, but it prevents complacency.
It prevents the ego from getting too big. It keeps you hungry. However, the body keeps the score, doesn't it? Eventually, all this intensity, all these miles, all this stress caught up with him.
It did. He faced a massive health crisis. He had been operating at this insane level for years, and suddenly, his body just started shutting down. He was fatigued, sick all the time. He went to the doctor, and they found something shocking. An atrial septal defect. ASD.
A hole in his heart.
A birth defect. He had a hole in his heart between the atria. It meant his heart was only functioning at partial capacity. His blood wasn't oxygenating properly. He had been getting insufficient oxygen his entire life.
Wait, pause for a second. So he did SEAL training, Ranger School, Hell Week, 100-mile races, all with a broken heart. All while suffocating, essentially.
From a medical standpoint, he shouldn't have been able to do any of it. The doctors were baffled.
And what was his reaction? Most people would say, oh my God, I could have died. Or, poor me, I was handicapped this whole time.
His reaction was pure Goggins. He felt awe. He thought, I did all that with a hole in my heart. Imagine what I could have done if I was healthy.
That is the ultimate glass half full perspective. It's unreal.
It ties into his what-if philosophy. This is the final weapon in his arsenal.
What if? How does he use that?
He uses it to silence self-doubt and the haters. Throughout his life, people told him what he couldn't do. You can't lose 100 pounds. You can't be a SEAL. You can't run on broken legs.
And the imposter syndrome we all feel. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough.
Right. Goggins flips it. He asks, but what if I can? It's a question that opens the door to possibility. What if I can pull this off? What if I can defy the odds? It shifts the focus from the difficulty of the task to the glory of the achievement.
It's the permission to dream audaciously.
It destroys the limitations others place on you and that you place on yourself. And looking back at his life, the abuse, the racism, the pain, the physical breakdowns, He ends the book on a note of forgiveness.
Which is surprising given how much anger fueled him early on.
He describes letting go of the hate for his father, letting go of the anger toward the people who called him racial slurs in Indiana. He realized that they were just characters in his story. They were the fire that forged the steel.
Ah.
Without the abuse, without the poverty, without the haters, he never would have gone into that bathroom and created the accountability mirror. He wouldn't be David Goggins.
He realized that the suffering was the training ground.
Exactly. He transformed himself from the weakest human being, a terrified, stuttering child, into the hardest man alive. And he did it through sheer force of will and a refusal to be comfortable.
So what does this all mean for us? For the listener driving to work or hitting the gym or just trying to get through the week, we aren't trying to be Navy SEALs.
It means we are leaving a lot on the table. We are settling.
Awesome.
We are stopping at 40% because it's uncomfortable to go further. Goggins challenges us to look in that accountability mirror and really ask ourselves, are we doing our best, or are we just doing enough to get by?
It's about callousness. Not in the sense of being cold or unfeeling toward other people, but in the sense of durability toward ourselves.
Resilience. It's about understanding that pain is information, it's data. It's not a stop sign. It's a starting line.
I want to leave you with a final thought, something to chew on as you go about your day. Goggins talks about that mirror.
The accountability mirror.
Right. If you stood in front of a mirror right now, stripped of your ego, stripped of your accolades, stripped of all your excuses, what would your reflection say to you? Not what you want it to say, what would it actually say? And are you willing to do the work, the dirty, painful, unglamorous work to change that reflection? Because as Goggins says, there is no finish line. The work doesn't end.
You just get harder.
Exactly. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mind of David Goggins. Stay hard.
Stay hard.